Welcome back, everyone. So jumping into our segment right now on client follow-up strategies. Gary, I know you've incorporated this quite strongly into your business, but if someone's just looking at starting to develop this, what's their first step?
I think the very, very first step you have to do is set up a routine. If you don't have reminders, if you don't have cues, chances are you're going to not do it. So for example, if you're going to call a client once a week and there's no prompt to do so, then chances are you might miss it. So my recommendation would be in Prospects or in your CRM, whichever system you're using for your database, I would encourage you to set up an action plan so that your active listings and your active buyers are in with a prompt. So that's pretty much what it is. In regular life, they say silence is golden, but in real estate, if you're not talking to your clients, silence is deadly.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So very important, of course, to have that CRM system and have a process almost that here's a brand new client, here's the 8 things I'm going to do to get them into my system up and going.
I think also that if you have, and I say this in the Prospects course, if you have a client, a contact with no to-do, the to-do list is blank,
you'll forget.
Chances are you're going to have a blank paycheck.
Yeah.
So you've got to be in touch, you've got to be top of mind, and that's primarily why you set up a system, set up a routine so that it's second nature to you to follow up with the clients.
Well, and I used to find that too. If you'd completed your contact for your Ford call or for whatever reason you were reaching out, if you didn't set up that next contact, they just went, and it's almost like the pond philosophy. They didn't stay up there in the current and keep moving with you. They sank right to the bottom and they were gone.
That's right.
And that's how you miss the clients.
Well, with Prospects, there's a thing called an action plan, which becomes a checklist. And you can actually set it up so that it automatically reminds you by email as well as on your screen when you're
well, and you have your Prospects class coming up, don't you?
Coming on the 25th, and one of the things we're going to talk about is action plans.
Excellent. So I know that it usually, as we refer to it, sells out instantly. You've been running this course for us, thankfully, for quite a few times now, and it's always sold out. So if there is room, get signed up. If there isn't, get on the wait list and try and get in there. You can always phone Gary, of course, 1,000,000 times a day.
Of course.
No, he teaches a great class. Please take the time to get to it.
Actually, we have a group now, an email group called Prospects Tips and Tricks.
Cool.
So if somebody figures out something that's different, they can share it with the rest of them.
Is it on a Facebook group? Or?
No, it's just email.
Okay.
But everybody knows who's on it, so they can reply.
All right. So maybe you could post that up in the agents page for us and on how if someone wants to get involved or get added to that email list.
Sure. Yeah,
that'd be
absolutely.
great.
Yeah.
So we talked about first step and we had a generic, but let's get a little more specific. What's the first step with buyers?
Well, I'm going to presuppose that you had the conversation with the buyer that we need to set some parameters. We have to talk about, are you approved to buy the properties that we're looking at so that you don't face the disappointment of actually seeing something you can't afford if there's a mortgage to be contemplated. If you set, for example, a family the other day, mom and dad and 3 teenage daughters wanted to see a house with 1 bathroom. And
Dad was going to go use the gas station, was he?
Dad was going to use the gas station. And I said, probably not a good plan. But they get sidetracked, buyers, with the kitchen or with something about the house. And, of course, if you can get 85% of what you want, you got the perfect house.
Yep.
But if you focus on some of the things, like the kitchen, sometimes they can forget that they've got 3 teenage daughters. Wow. So that presupposition is that you've had that conversation. The other thing that you've talked about is the fact that are you going to be interested in a resale product or are you going to be looking at a new home purchase?
Yeah.
If you're looking at a new home purchase, there's an arrangement between CREB and the home builders that you have to introduce your client to the builder.
Yes.
And that's a very important step. You're the one doing the introduction, and that's how you actually get registered, and that's how you actually participate.
Don't register with a builder, and you'll find out why you should.
Exactly.
No registration, no check.
And also no participation.
Yep.
And I think also that we need to respect that the builder also has expertise that we don't have.
Absolutely.
Because we're dealing on a regular basis with resale, and you go, that's the house, right?
Well, I find that realtors that have taken Ninja understand the process much better and understand that you're working in a partnership with the builder to achieve the goal of what is your mutual client. So the better you can work together, the better experience for the client, and the builder starts to respect you much more as a realtor.
And it shouldn't be adversarial. In other words, we have something to contribute. It may be as simple as saying there's only one plug in the middle of that wall. Perhaps we need two, because that's where the sofa goes, an extra set of eyes. So when we're in there with the builder, we want to be positive, and we also want to make good positive contribution to the process. Blueprint review, you've talked about where that plug should be. Now you want to make sure it's on the blueprint.
Make
Things
sure the
like
changes got done.
Exactly. But I use the analogy that the home inspection is not an opportunity to renegotiate the price.
No.
And having a realtor there is not an opportunity to pillage the builder.
Absolutely.
We're there to represent the client and to try and get as good a property as they can for the client. But I think, so with resale properties, it's a little different. You're setting the parameters. The buildings are already there, so there's no changes to be made to the buildings. So the first step with buyers is you set up the action plan we talked about. So it's important to have that action plan already made so that you're not reinventing the wheel every time a new buyer comes along. You simply attach that action plan, and you can tweak it, because in moments that are quiet, you mentioned earlier on about there are times like now when it's not as busy and crazy. Those are the times when you want to re-look at your action plan and say, am I calling these people often enough, or am I calling them too often, so that you can tweak it. So if it's every week and you want to make it twice a week, then those are the times to make those changes.
Well, and every client's different. And in your part of your buyer interview and getting to know them is understanding what form of communication plan is going to work best for their personality. Some people will be very happy with that once a week market update call. There's nothing new, there's nothing that's fitting. We've gone through our 10-step buyer process, all of those things. And there are other people that are going to want more information and more of your time.
Engineers.
And
accountants.
Teachers. We all know who the different personality types. And you have to have your communication plan, get the information they want and need, and communicate it effectively. But it's going to change depending on that client's personality type.
And one of the things that is useful is when you sit down with the buyer, I call it the wish list. It's needs, I need these things, and I want these things. But the wish list, once you've established it, set up an MLS search on Matrix so that the results are coming instantly to your client, the buyer. And then BCC yourself, copy yourself on it, so that every time they get a result, it's an opportunity for you to call them and say, hey, we saw this one come up on such and such a street. Looks like it meets most of your check boxes. Do you want to go take a look at it?
Well, especially in a market right now where we're still verging right on the edge of a seller's market, inventory's tight. I communicated with a realtor on the weekend. They had written 5 offers already with this client. They were writing on another one. They knew the price had been marketed very aggressively to try and sell it fast and generate competitives. They got their offer in first. She had a very good strategy. She ended up in competition. There were 19 realtors bidding on it, and she was successful. She had a good plan. Her clients were prepared. She moved forward with it and was able to get a conditionally sold property for her client. But those are some of the things you're facing right now, and being able to be current and let people know if that perfect one pops, I'm going to try and get a hold of you as quick because of the market we're in. But also, we want to manage the process too, and through our 10-step buyer process, doing almost exactly what you say, is it's not just a process of selection. We're finding out their wants and their whys, and then because we know they look for their wants, but they end up buying their whys. So we want to make sure that also that we're doing those funnel processes and using that process of elimination through Matrix. Once it sends us everything and everything else that we threw in that pool for our buyer, that we're only plucking out the best ones for them to go and see.
Right.
So we're not ending up showing them 60 homes and they get frustrated. We're showing them the right ones, and that very quickly they're going to acknowledge and understand that we're getting them in front of the best properties.
And I think also that if you show them or arrange to show them a just expired property, for example, you're doing way more than most realtors are doing.
Oh, absolutely.
And that expired property might just be that fit. So be aware of the terminated, the expires, the conditionally terminated, things like that.
Especially if you want to avoid competitive offers.
Especially if you want to avoid, if you want to be the only one on the block, that's a really good start, you know.
Yeah. Anything else you recommend with buyers?
Market reports. People want to know that they said they have three fears. Right? One is not getting the property they want. One is paying too much for the property. And the third fear is actually having a property that has some problems. One of the ways to address the I don't want to pay too much for the property is to send them a market report. If they're an active buyer and you set them up on the Prospects market report, they will have a moving 12 months of all the properties that are being sold in the communities that they have of interest. So that's one of the things. The other one is to follow up at least once a week.
Oh, minimum.
If nothing shows up, phone and tell them nothing showed up. They will appreciate it.
Well, you'll still give them their market update. They know you care. They know you're watching.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the number one reason someone stops using their realtor, lack of communication.
Silence is deadly.
Yes,
Exactly.
not golden in this case.
Exactly.
So moving forward to sellers, it's a little bit different, but the main, again, will be communication and staying in touch. Well, what's your first step with sellers?
Again, similar to the buyers, you want to set up an action plan so that, again, you're reminded of the things that you've decided are important for you to do.
Yes.
So you sat down in a quiet moment and you said, in order to keep my sellers happy, I need to do these things. Once you set that action plan up, it helps you it prompts you. So the big key with sellers is managing expectations.
Absolutely.
They're talking about the timeline at the bottom with the love line at the top. And the maximum love is the day you list it. And as the time goes further along, that love starts to dive. If you keep them in touch with what's happening and you give them good reasons, CIR is a fantastic company for helping you with sellers.
Yes.
Because you've got the Monday morning meeting, you can say, just drop them a note. And I do it with a template in Prospects. So I don't have to type it. I just go plunk. Your listing was showed on CIR Live this morning. There were approximately 140, or in this case, whatever it is, right?
88 a few minutes ago.
Yeah. So,
somebody's on vacation,
but
it's
they
not
read,
me.
Exactly, but they read it and they go, okay, Gary did something that day.
Yes.
And then a couple of days later, I put it on the CIR Facebook page and tell them exactly how many people are members. Like, don't say about 490 members. 496 agents subscribe to that page because it gives that credibility.
Yeah.
And direct email with, of course, the CASL permission approvals these days.
Yes.
But you're doing over and above just throwing it on the MLS.
Well, I'm reminding them because you've got your marketing plan that you're following through on it.
Yeah.
You're doing your open houses. I know you're very active with realtor open houses and realtor caravans and use that effectively. So, and I agree with you. It's managing the expectation. And you can go through a challenging period trying to sell a client's home as long as you communicate effectively what's going on. We've all sat in there, and when you're asking the questions and doing your normal interview process, how was your process last time? And the number one reason is I never heard from them. They stuck a sign in the lawn, and an assistant or somebody called when there was a showing request, and now realtors are, try to push it even through showing time, that the showing time system electronically notifies them. It's great for the realtor, saves time. I wouldn't recommend it though. So my recommendation is pick up the phone, talk to your client about a showing.
Yeah,
because if they just say no, I want to know why. How can we change the schedule that's going to work for them and maybe work for the potential buyer, and have those good conversations.
I have a template that I send them out once we're listed that outlines what the expectation is when there are showing requests. And one of them is don't cancel a showing request without calling me. So that I can see if I can salvage it if the time they've asked for doesn't work. And that's happened quite often where people just can't accommodate a showing, but because we talk to the realtor,
We
the
can
realtor
flex
says,
it and
that's
find
right.
a solution.
So they either put us at the start, put us at the finish, or maybe on another day.
Well, and I think too, we've all had those clients that 14 seconds after the realtor's left showing, you get a phone call. What did they think? Now, we don't want to talk to them if you're in a busy market and they're getting 7, 8 showings a week. You don't want to talk to them every day about every showing. You need to manage that expectation, set up your weekly update call
Absolutely.
of what's happened with the showings, what's going on, all of these things.
I think again, it comes back to managing expectations. Where
Absolutely.
You say, I'm going to call you once a week. We don't always get responses back for a showing or feedback requests, but we're going to send out 3, and showing time is really good for this because
Yes.
you can program it. So I say the very first 2 days, we're going to send an email requesting it. Showing time's doing that. We're not doing it. But on the 3rd day, if I haven't heard, I'll make a follow-up phone call.
Yes.
So they know that they don't have to call. They still call, and then you remind them. Remember, we're going to wait a couple, 3 days because we don't want to show ourselves as being too anxious.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it hurts your negotiation. Right?
Well, and when you have that conversation, if you haven't got the feedback, you've got that opportunity to remind them, we followed through on our action plan. We made our 2 email
That's right.
contacts. We made a personal phone call.
Yeah.
Here's what I discovered during the personal phone call, and you move on. And they know you're working hard and you've done a good job educating them about the reality of the current marketplace.
Yeah.
They're much more amenable to taking the time required to achieve the goal they want, which is their house sold at the right price.
And the magic word you used earlier on is communication. If
Yeah.
you're communicating with your client in good, bad, or ugly times, they're going to appreciate the fact that they've been kept in the loop. The worst situation is for them to sit at home wondering what's going on. The other thing I do is I set up the MLS watch. Now, one of the things I do a little differently is I've got the active listings that are competing with theirs.
Yes.
And I try to make it so that they are comparables. We're not looking at a single-family detached house with no garage with a double-attached front garage.
Yeah.
So we're comparing
Apples to
similar.
apples.
That's right. But the other thing I do also is I include the last sales for the last 7 days. So the portal isn't getting cluttered with a whole bunch of sales, but they're getting a notification that this got sold. I get a copy of it, and I immediately forward it to them with comments.
Yeah.
So I might say this one backed onto green space. This is why they got that price, and we're not getting that price because we back onto 7-Eleven. So that they, again, understand that, okay, even though things are selling and theirs isn't, I'm giving them some reasons why they're selling.
Well, and chances are, if they are that comparable, they may have viewed yours as well, the buying realtor.
Yeah.
And I've found that if they've been able to, if they've bought something else, sometimes they're much more open now to giving feedback. And we can talk to them and say, what was the deciding factor between the two? I'm pretty sure you saw, I know you saw ours, day later you saw this one, and it's gone under contract.
Yeah.
And then realtors are sometimes able to share, well, there was something, and if it's something you can't change in your house, it's that green carpet or it's whatever, we can have those discussions. But I always try to put buyers' eyes on them as well at that point. Talk about, when you bought this place, how many did you see before you found the one with the sunlight beaming on it? And they begin to understand that, you know, we need just the right person to walk through, and not everybody that walks in is going to instantly love your house the way you do. It's very personal when you're buying a home.
Well, I had one the other day where a for sale sign went up, and within 3 days there was a sold sign on it.
Yeah.
We were selling a 2-bedroom. This was a 1-bedroom, aggressively priced.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't know that it was a 1-bedroom unless they were getting the reports, and they wouldn't see the 1-bedroom because we were only showing them comparables. So when I made the phone call to her and I said, look, we just saw a for sale sign, it sold in 3 days. That was a 1-bedroom. And she goes, oh, it wasn't a competition, so she didn't feel that bad.
Yeah.
So, as I say,
Absolutely. Good communications.
Absolutely. Market updates, listing reviews. The hit counter on Matrix, very important.
Yeah.
How many people are actually seeing it? How many marked it as a favorite? And I'm going to make a point of talking about conversion, and I'm not a huge knowledgeable person on conversion, but there are a lot of
That's a with you on that one.
but there are a lot of websites that realtors have. Brother Steve has got one that the buyers can actually change the parameters.
Yeah.
So they can actually set their own and make changes to it. We do our own changes on Matrix. So again, you're going to get when you visit, when we show them who is visiting the site and how many hits they've had, how many people have made it favorites, how many people have rejected it,
Yes.
it just gives them a really clear picture.
Yeah.
So that they're not blindsided if it's been 3, 4, 5 weeks and nothing's happened.
Well, and sometimes it helps us address known issues
That's right.
and say, both from our feedback we've gotten from realtors that have showed it, people that have marked it as a favorite, why not?
Yeah.
And perhaps we can work on some of those things to increase the saleability of the home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've talked about really with people, the buyers and sellers that we have are going to be definitely under contract. What about when you're in that initial stage and you're wooing them? You're wooing your new buyer and you're wooing seller prospects. What follow-up systems, what do you do there to be able to
So
stay
the
in
first
touch?
thing I tell people is that the average Canadian moves every 7 to 10 years, which means that when you just happen upon a person, they could be anywhere in that cycle.
Absolutely.
So the Best by Nest program, because they're living in the house and they have to maintain it, is a really good way to keep in touch with them. They get a monthly newsletter. It only costs you $5 to get them registered.
One time.
One time. But it sets them up on a mailing list. It sets them up for seminars. It sets them up for discounts. And if you keep in touch with them on that basis alone, you're offering them a value-added service that everybody with 720 realtors in Calgary can't offer.
Absolutely.
So the
And
CIR
I love it because it's auto flow. It's 12 contacts a year. I don't have to actually, other than my initial setup,
Yeah.
do. And then it's just going to flow out.
And I think that the important thing, we have to have your client's permission to set them up on the Best by Nest.
Yes.
But you can call them. Like on my action plan for a brand new client is invite them to join Best by Nest. And in 7 days, I get another pop-up that says follow up on it to make sure they've registered, that they've activated it. And if they haven't and they would like to, you can activate them.
Well, make sure, and I encourage our realtors to make sure they've given our marketing team enough time to activate, get the package together.
And
It
mail
goes
it out.
out through Canada Post.
That's right.
So sometimes following up, I know that when I've looked at it, some realtors are finding that at that 1 week mark, sometimes they've got it, sometimes they've not yet. But there's nothing
It's
wrong
a touch
with
point.
But it's a touch point. Just wanted to make sure that's received, want to see if it's come through. We depend on Canada Post.
And we can joke about Canada Post because
Absolutely.
sometimes you phone them and they haven't got it and you say, well, you know, Canada Post, right?
Yeah. Well,
So,
and the old
yeah.
story too now with less and less delivery right to the home.
Yeah.
Everything is at the mailbox. Some people go to their mailbox once a week.
So on the action plan that I have, it says invite them to join Best by Nest.
Yeah.
And then if you've done it, because you may not do it right away, 7 days after I make that first phone call, and I can follow it up if they haven't received the paperwork or the card. But it is a good touch point, and it is a very valuable program because there are over 100 vendors that will give them discounts on it. I also, after they've received it, they've been activated, a couple of 60 days after that, I'll actually call them and say, you ever wondered what the house down the road sold for? Oh, yeah, I saw the sold sign. Market report. With prospects, you can, if they're passive and they're not in the market, you can set them up on a 3-month market report.
Yep.
So
they
they're
like
not-
to know what's going on.
What's going on, exactly. Know your market, it's your biggest investment. And so that's the second thing. If they're willing, we set them up on that. Again, we're talking about following up and keeping in touch, top of mind. I think NAR says that 87% of the buyers would deal with the same realtor again if they could remember who
Who
that
they
realtor
were.
was.
Absolutely.
And it is because there's 7 to 10 years in between. And if you've not kept in touch, chances are they won't remember.
They're gone.
So the market report is another means of keeping in touch with both new clients as well as existing clients that you've maybe sold or bought with before.
Well, and I look at things when we're searching for reasons to make our monthly Ford call, if you're using that system, and you look at things like Best My Nest, it's easy to find a reason from there.
Yeah.
Our corn maze, our
Yeah.
stampede party, the
Yeah.
kids' Christmas party, Best My Nest events that are upcoming, different
Yep,
reasons
seminars,
to
yeah.
call.
Yeah.
Certainly in the springtime, calling people about available discounts on Best My Nest that they could utilize and reminding them that they're there. So you have a good call. It's not, hi, do you want to buy or sell real estate? It's, talking to them about their family, what's going on in their lives,
Right.
how was the trip to Disney, all of these things. And the reason I called today was, and then you're offering a value every time.
Exactly.
And they'll always take your call, and they understand or begin to understand that you do truly care about them. And it will generate referrals. You can be incorporating real estate reviews once a year into that to follow up on things like the quarterly report. There's just so many great ways.
And again, touting Team Blue, there's a newsletter that you
Yep.
can sign up for $4, and it will personalize it and send it to your clients.
Yeah.
So again, that's another touch point. If you
and
do,
it's 15 minutes once a month with MailChimp.
exactly, and if you do set them up on, for example, MLS, if they're not actively in the market, there are soft ways of asking approximately when they might be. And I usually use the words, in a perfect world, when do you think you'd ever move from this
Wave the
house?
magic wand.
Yeah, in a perfect world, when would you ever move, you know?
Well, and understand that people change throughout their life. When they buy that first home and it's the nice starter home,
Yeah.
and they have 1 or 2 kids and the kids are getting older and it's a 1.5 bath, you can chat with them about,
Wouldn't you love an ensuite?
is there anything you'd change in your home right now? What could we look at? What
Yeah.
can you do?
Yeah.
And things like that. Or as you're following and staying in touch, you understand that they've moved forward in their career and their income level has probably ratcheted up. Or all the kids are in school now, so the spouse that was staying at home is now back in the workplace.
Exactly.
And disposable income has increased.
Exactly.
So, and what are their goals? And if you're talking to them about their dreams, it will come up when they want to make the change.
That's right. And they'll give you a good idea. And again, because you've got the access to prospects, which is included in your CREB fees, there's no reason why you can't, if they say 2020, there's no reason why you can't put 2020 in your calendar from now.
Yeah.
If you plan on being around in 2020 in this business, it would be fantastic. And then the last thing was keeping in touch with all of the buyers, the sellers, as well as the prospective buyers and sellers, his birthdays, anniversaries, things like that.
Easy touch points.
Yes.
And the power of the personal note.
Oh, yeah. The power of the personal note. I have
It's
at
huge.
least a minimum 2 personal notes a year to all my clients, and I do it religiously, so to speak. The other thing with anniversaries, Ninja, we joked about that at Ninja. Don't call the wife, call the husband several days before the anniversary, and he's a hero.
Well, if you're going to
so
call the
you.
wife, call her like a month ahead because that's when they think about it.
That's right.
The husband you can call 4 or 5 days ahead and he goes, thank God.
Thank God you reminded me.
Yeah.
So those are things that are personal. Those are things that are really appreciated.
Yeah.
They get a handwritten birthday card from you. You're probably the only one. Maybe, I would say 3 or 4 people for the whole year may have acknowledged their birthday
Yeah.
in a handwritten
It's
birthday
easy to
card.
do the thumbs up, the little heart on
Yep.
Facebook. The
And-
personal note, much more powerful.
And there's a company called Note Card Cafe that Ninja used,
Yeah.
and they're 26 cents a card. There's
Yeah.
no reason why, for $1, you keep in touch with these people twice
Excellent.
a year.
So I think we've covered a lot of the areas.
think so.
I would encourage everybody to come to your prospects class. They can get a little more in-depth in using that system
Yeah.
as part of their whole communication strategy over time with their client. Because
Yeah.
it's not just a follow-up program. It really is a communication strategy that will, when they're going to be 7 or 10 years till they buy their next place, during that time we should be able to generate referrals.
Absolutely.
All the different sales systems
Very
say
good
somewhere
point.
between 14 and 17 deals for every 100 people you have on your database if you're following up with them correctly.
And if you're encouraging them as well to remember that, if you're happy with the service I've given you and you see some benefit to it, it's just part of the corn maze, right? Not just invite your client, but invite your client's buddy, the child's best friend.
Yeah,
Now you've got
absolutely.
the adult's going to come, and you've got another touch point with somebody else that is a potential client.